Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Hopefully, you got to hang out with us in Sangeeta last night for the positivity circle that we're doing every month because things are a little stressful. It's winter. Some of you have seasonal affective disorder, and the world is just a little crazy. So definitely check that out. I'm here. Yesterday, I came from Durham, North Carolina, which was a balmy 80 degrees. Today, we are at cloudy, foggy 50 degrees, which is crazy. This 80 is too warm for where I live, Jane, in February.
Right.
But then, it was 11 degrees like 3 weeks ago. So it's so crazy. So I'm
Yeah.
here with Jane Thurnell-Read, and you guys may remember her from last year during the bundle. She came on and chatted, and I'm going to let her introduce yourself. I'm saying the same. Okay, you guys, you can introduce yourself in the comments. This is going to be an interesting foggy brain day. But she has a new book out about being healthier, doing whole food plant-based on a budget, called Health and Wellbeing on a Budget. Thanks for holding that up for me. I managed to even say it right. And so I'm super excited to talk about that because with some of the craziness that we're stressed out about in the world, prices are going up, and prices have been going up ever since 2020 and the pandemic, I've been finding. So I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Thanks very much, Kathy. So I'm Jane Thurnell-Read. I'm an author, a blogger. I talk a lot about healthy aging. I'm also a vegan. I'm trustee for Veganuary, which is, some of you will know that, that's a charity for getting people to try being vegan in January. And I love writing and sharing information. And one of the things is that I think there's a huge amount of research out there about how to be healthy, and people just don't seem to know it. So I think it's really important to share that, and that's one of the things I try to do in my books. So yeah.
I love that because one of the big things people say is, I can't go vegan, it's too expensive, right? We get and I will say some of the negatives. We can debunk all of these. So if you're just coming in, don't be discouraged. Some people say it's too hard, it's too expensive, it's not delicious. And that's because y'all aren't making my recipes, is all I have to say to you. I'm making it easy, budget friendly most of the time. There are some things that are not, but, and tasty. And there is going to be this transition, right? From you're eating this, we call it here the standard American diet. What do you call it in the UK?
Well, we don't actually have the idea of a standard UK diet, but our diet is very much following behind you. The increase in ultra processed food. Now I think you're at 60% of calories for most people are come from ultra processed food, whereas in the UK it's about 50%. So whatever you do, we follow along behind. And, as we know, the standard American diet isn't a healthy diet.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you're coming from, maybe I could even say, for some countries, for pasty white countries, if you're coming from the traditional diet, because then I almost wanted to say traditional diet, but then I was like, thinking of Indian food and Asian food, and those
Yeah.
are those are different. So that's why I chose to put it that way. But a very meat and potato centric, and I think the U.S. and the UK both kind of developed that way. In fact, I think we probably inherited it first from you guys,
Yes.
made it a
Yeah.
little worse, and passed it back. And there is some challenges, because you may get pushback from friends and family. You're going to have to kind of stick to your convictions a little bit, which is hard when you're just trying something out.
Yeah.
Do you?
Can I give you a tip here
Yes,
of how to deal with that? Right.
absolutely.
Because people you can get pushback, and one of the easiest things to do is, you can argue and you can get in a fight with people and you can get annoyed, you can get angry, and it doesn't help you and it doesn't help them. But one of the things you can do is say very calmly, very quietly, just humor me. And when you say those words, just humor me, it takes the anger, it takes the opposition out of things. You're not saying agree with me. You're not saying believe me. You're not saying you're wrong. You're asking them to actually be kind to you. Just humor me. And I've shared this tip with lots of people, and they've come back and said, "My God, that actually works." And I think it works because very often, if you're trying to follow one diet, particularly if you want your family to do it and they don't want to, you can get into a very oppositional, argumentative way. So by using the phrase, just humor me, then it won't always work, but it will work sometimes, maybe a lot. So it's definitely worth trying.
I could not love that anymore. Let me tell you. So, like, I even wrote it down because I think it's so brilliant. And it's a very British way of putting something, too. Just humor me. And it's such a polite way of asking. And one of the things that I always say, too, is because you have to be careful. So, like, once you get past the trying it out stage and maybe your cholesterol's improved or maybe you have a little more energy, that's when the evangelical stage can start.
Yes.
And get,
Yes.
oh, this is helping me. I want to help everybody else. It comes from a good place, but it is a lot of arguing and people feel very beat down. And so I think if you start out coming from that place, just humor me, it's a lot easier to then go, I'm just humoring them. I'm letting them
Yeah.
be them. So I really like that.
Yeah. It's much less confrontational. And it will work because the person will go, well, I don't know, I think she's absolutely stupid following this diet, but okay, I love her, she's my friend, she's my daughter, she's my partner, whatever, you know let me humor her.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I may steal that from you
Oh, please do.
and pass it on if that's okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think that's a great way to do it. Because I think what happens, especially, in times of strife, which is for everybody is going through some kind of strife at any given minute, probably since the start of time.
yes, yes,
Right? So it doesn't have to be our situation right now. If you're watching this video 5 years from now, it could be something else that's happening. But it's very easy to then get into that us versus them mentality. And I think one of the things we talked about last night in the positivity circle that I've been doing for a couple of months with Sangeeta, she does it in her home, which is really cool, is that you have to take care of yourself first. You have to put your oxygen mask on first, is the thing
yeah,
we're saying over
yeah,
and over again. And just humor me is the verbal way of doing that.
yeah, yeah,
Right? It creates the safe space for you. Um, and Tanya says, I've stopped trying to give loved ones and friends my advice because it just caused issues and
yeah,
fights. Do I
yeah,
wish they'd make better choices? Yes, but I just do me and they do them. And my experience, and I'd be curious, I think yours may be similar, is that when you're trying to make someone do something, like eat better, go vegan, do this, or even, I don't know, think about your partner, husband, wife, whatever. Why my thing is, why is that on the kitchen counter? We have a whole house. This is not mine. Right?
yes, yes,
Has it helped in 20 years? 2%.
yes,
Right?
yes, yeah. I mean, I think all couples have the same arguments over and over again.
Oh,
You
of
know,
course. And again, and I say this a lot, like that's just marriage. You just learn to deal with it in a different way. And that's an easier thing to deal with. But like all the people are like, you've got to stop eating meat. Okay, I've not eaten meat since 1983. So it's not an issue for me. But the people who believe that saying that to someone is going to make them stop, then the opposite, to me, I think the opposite would be true. So if a meat eater said to me, you have to start eating meat, I'd go, okay. And I'm never going to do that. So
Yeah,
me
yeah.
trying to approach someone in a way that I would never listen to them. So I like this. Just let me try this. I know that Dr. Lyle talks a lot about just saying, and Dr. McDougall too. Oh, this is just some crazy thing my doctor has me on. So that
Yeah,
you don't have to have that conversation and
yeah,
argument.
yeah, yeah,
And yeah, and I'm not saying that's what everyone has to do, but if you feel like you're keeping backed up in a corner, those are all good tools that you can use.
yeah.
And just I think for me, the idea of going from vegan or from regular diet to vegan or whole food plant-based, which is another thing. Vegan and whole food plant-based are a little different. Both have really great qualities about them, and all are welcome here. But you are going to get some of the taste differences. And one of the things I do as a recipe developer is I try to bring in those flavors that you might miss. But let's hear what you have about making that transition on a budget. Like, how can we make that not so expensive? Because people usually look and they go, oh, well, vegan chicken costs more than regular chicken. And if I buy this, that, and the other. So, what are some of your main tips?
Okay, so I'm not a cook. I don't actually cook virtually at all. I do very, very minor bits of cooking. So a lot of my tips are not so much around cooking, but about how you think about food, how you organize things.
I think that's
And
perfect because I try to make things that are just easy for people who don't cook. Like, actually, I have some sauce mixes that like a mushroom gravy made with potato flakes and mushroom powder and things like that. So I could give it to you, and then you could put mushroom gravy on things that you get. So it doesn't all
right.
have. I'm not expecting you to go, oh, blah blah blah. But
Yeah, yeah,
also,
yeah.
it would be very interesting to know, as a person who doesn't cook, what are your go-to tips? Because that's great shortcuts for people if they aren't feeling well.
Okay, so I do actually eat lots and lots of salads with lentils, walnuts. We know, I mean, the research shows really, really firmly that we all ought to be eating a small handful of nuts every day, and so I always try and get that in at some point. If you can eat a small handful of nuts rather than a high calorie or a very fatty or sugary snack, then it's even better. And so I often have for lunch, I'll have a big salad with some lentils and some often walnuts. If you don't sleep very well, pistachios are really good because they're very high in melatonin. So I would choose pistachios in that situation.
That's
Um,
interesting. I've never heard that before. That's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. The Australian nut, I can't remember, the Australian nut something or other, on their website talks about all the different nuts and the different advantages of eating different nuts. Now, I know pistachios aren't cheap, but if you're replacing a bought expensive high calorie snack, then with pistachio nuts, then it's not actually going to cost you a lot extra. Yeah. Um, another thought is, I mean, people spend an awful lot of money on snacks, um, and there's some interesting research about using lavender oil. That if you smell lavender oil before meals or any time when you want a snack, it actually reduces the desire, it reduces the craving. And, if you're constantly reducing your cravings, then you're going to be saving money because, even if you make your own snacks, you'll still be saving money.
Oh,
So I
that's
think that,
true. I'm curious, I'm wondering if the lavender, because lavender traditionally relaxes you. So I wonder if it's as help maybe if you're stress eating, stress
I
snacking.
think that is quite likely to be the case. Um, that, because we all know that when we're stressed, we comfort eat. And one of my favorite tips of all, which I recently found, was that, and people always love, is that if you're stressed, if you're anxious, or if you're depressed, listening to birdsong actually is very calming and lifts your spirits. And it can be recorded birdsong. Now, on YouTube, you can get 7 hours of birdsong, but if you've got a free YouTube account, then every so often you're going to be have adverts intervening. So what I recommend people do is to do a web search for Dawn Chorus audio track. The BBC, and I believe you can access it from North America. The BBC have loads and loads of beautiful, beautiful dawn choruses, and so l- making time for listening to this sort of thing can be really helpful in helping you to crave less and therefore not be so dependent on using your willpower to have to eat well.
And sorry, I'm actually looking it up on the other computer so I can put it in the comments. I think that's great. Because one of the things that we were talking about too, just being outside can be very helpful when you can, if weather permits.
Yeah.
Um, but and now that you're saying that, it is. I like hearing the birds. I like hearing the frogs. I like hearing the insects.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, exactly. But for some people, that's not possible because they live in, a place where there's virtually no birds, or the traffic is so loud they can't hear the birds. But this research was actually done on people listening to recordings.
Oh,
So not actually being out in nature, not actually listening to real live birds. So this is something you can do. I think a lot of people struggle to eat healthily and then they get really annoyed with themselves because they're not eating well. And that doesn't help because what you end up saying, to hell with it, and binging on something, or, I've already had one cookie, so I might as well finish the packet or whatever it is. And so for those people, I think it's much more important to treat this much more holistically and look at things like um, listening to birdsong to reduce your stress, writing a gratitude letter to someone you've never thanked. That's been shown to be really beneficial, and it's very cheap to do. And the benefit of that for the person who actually wrote the letter, even like 2-3 months later, that person still is less stressed, is happier because they've written that gratitude letter. So this sort of thing, I think, can really help people. Because if you're struggling continually and you're ending up binging and so on, you're going to be spending a lot of money on food.
that's very true. And that is another interesting tactic, when you're trying to be on the straight and narrow or not fall off the wagon. So I like that a lot. Because I'm assuming that groceries have gone up in the UK as well
Yeah,
as
yeah,
here. And
yeah.
like right now, I guess we're in some kind of big egg crisis. Eggs are really expensive. Yay, vegans and plant based people. That's one thing we can be grateful for, right? Flaxseed so far costs the same
Yes,
as it used
yes.
to. Um, what are some other things that you would think, if someone was just starting their journey, that would be good to kind of save on the budget?
Okay, so I mean, we all know that beans are really, really good for us. They're good for the microbiome, which means that they are help your immune system. They help your digestive system. They've been shown also to help your mood. And beans are very, very cheap. Um, if you've got an instant pot, cook your beans yourself. They taste so much better. I recently bought some dried organic soya beans and cooked them in my instant pot. I was amazed at the taste of them. And in a salad with a dressing which is not too much oil. I mean, I do use oil. I don't. Do you use oil, Kathy? Are you
I
oil
I
free?
don't. I am oil free, but I'd say to 95% I'm whole food, plant based, no oil. So when we go out, I don't request it to be no oil.
Yeah.
So that's one of the reasons why we started a second channel for the plant based explorers, because then we ate a beautiful vegan meal on Virgin Voyages and it was pretty much whole food plant based, but there definitely was some oil in it.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, you can have a no oil dressing, and I'm sure Kathy has loads and loads of those. So, I actually found soya beans was just such a revelation. How wonderful they were, and for those, it was a cup of dried soya beans, 2 cups of that I then soaked and then put them in the instant pot with three quarters of a cup of water and cook for I think something like 40 minutes and then natural release. And they were wonderful. That's a very cheap thing you can do. So having things like that. So beans, and lentils and peas and stuff like that. Really, really cheap, filling. In terms of fruit and veg, people often think that frozen vegetables and frozen fruit is less nutritious, but the evidence is very clear that in fact it tends to be more nutritious because it's frozen very soon after picking. Whereas if you buy fresh, it might have been, it could be 2 or 3 days since it was picked, and during that time it's going to lose some of its vitamin C content and so on. So actually having a well-stocked freezer with fruit and veg is really, really good, and that can really help you eat. We're now saying eat 30 different plants a week, and that's been shown to be very good for your gut biome. And it's surprising how often people don't actually do this. I talked to a friend who said to me, "Yeah, I eat 30 fruit. I eat loads of veg and I eat loads of fruit." And I said, "Well, why don't you do it and see?" And he did it, and what he found was he was only eating about 17 different fruit, vegetables, plants, herbs, spices, and so on a week, because he was eating the same thing every morning. He had a smoothie, and every morning he put exactly the same things in it, and so he was eating a relatively healthy diet, but it was very much the same rather than trying to go for that 30 fruit and vegetables, 30 plants a week, which we know is really beneficial for us.
And I'm a big proponent of having easy, accessible, frozen prepped
Yeah,
fruits and vegetables as well. I also do cans. So even though I cook a lot of beans from scratch, I always have at least 6 to 10 cans of beans in the pantry. And sometimes those beans will sit there for 8 months, right? But then that eighth month, I'm going to use almost all of them because it's a busy
yes, yes,
time.
yeah,
And I find that that makes it a little easier for success. And I also think it's important to think about fruits and vegetables being frozen or even buying them cut up if you can't find that vegetable frozen is fine. It's, depending on why you're doing this, if you're doing it for environmental reasons, you're probably trying to lessen some of the bags and plastic use, and that's fine. And that's going to work for some people. However, there's some people who also have physical disabilities that can't break down a butternut squash, and instead of like going, oh, I guess I can't have butternut squash, go to your store. There's some already cut up. Usually there's some cut up in the freezer. And I also agree with you completely because even if we eat seasonally, which does really help lower costs of fresh
yeah,
vegetables,
yeah,
you're going to be eating the same ones. You're not going to have the same variety. Like all summer, I eat berries every morning. Like I probably turn into a berry because that's my favorite, right? And they're finally affordable. So I'm like, woo! but if you have something in the freezer, then that way you can bring some stuff out. One of the things, I have a little like container garden. So maybe I had 5 or 6 tomato plants. Those are things you can freeze and then use some later on it feels super treaty.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's really great. And also in this time where maybe you have a little seasonal affective disorder, you're overwhelmed by the world, I may not have the energy to go get that butternut squash, but I can open up my freezer and throw some butternut squash in cubes into the microwave and put some different spice blend on it. And then it feels like I've done something really treaty for myself, but it took what, 10 minutes?
Yeah. 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 I totally agree with that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I just let yourself, be gentle to yourself, be reasonable with yourself as well. And I'm preaching to me as well as to you guys. I'm not always reasonable myself. Like I realized I was talking to Chef AJ and I said, "Oh, these are my cheater meals." And she's like, "Do you mean like off plan?" And I was like, "No, it feels like I didn't do anything but dinner's ready. They're all compliant." But like with the cans of beans, actually I did this for something she's doing now. The ultimate weight loss is that I made 4 dishes with 4 cans of beans in like 20 minutes. So and we ate all of that all week. You can make chili, you can make refried beans. Like you can make refried beans by just mashing up beans and putting chili powder in it. And you can make it that simple, or you can get a little more finessey like I might. It doesn't matter as long as you like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely agree. Yeah. If you have you tried putting a whole butternut squash in the Instant Pot and cooking it that way?
The ones I get are so big, they're not going to fit.
Right.
But the smaller ones you can. I would poke holes in it. And you could, have you done that before?
Yeah, I've done that. Vegan Richer has a wonderful, I make it sound like I do cook. I do very occasionally cook, but I don't cook a lot. Vegan Richer has a wonderful, in her Instant Pot book, she has a wonderful recipe for a squash soup. And you put all the sort of, the onions and some apple and veggie stock and things. And then you put the whole squash on top, and then you cook it, and then afterwards you take it out, take the squash out, and the peel falls off it, and then you just scoop out the seeds, and then you mash it all together, so it's great.
And I've done that with pie pumpkins in
Oh,
the
right,
Instant
okay,
Pot, because
yeah,
those are little pumpkins.
yeah, yeah,
And I've done that in the just in the oven and stuff too. There's so many ways. Like the first cruise I went on in December, when we went down to the buffet, I was very apprehensive. Like, is there going to be anything for me to eat? Well, there was a vegan section, and then around here, and then on this section, there was Indian food. So there was a lot we could eat there. Right there was just a mountain of whole roasted vegetables, whole roasted butternut squashes, big ones,
wow,
zucchini, eggplant, like I literally just took the big bell part off the butternut squash and ate it with some rice, and it felt like the most treaty thing ever. Because I don't make it for myself enough. And I'm like, I should make that more. But it's amazing that even something like frozen vegetables, some lentils, and some rice or salad can really be turned into anything. I do a lot of spice blends, but you can buy your own. I make mine because I make mine without salt.
right,
I do eat salt, but that means I can make it as flavorful as I want instead
yeah,
of
yeah,
as salty as I want. And actually, I'm just trying to put together, I got this little blender, and I'm going to try taking it on the next cruise and make
oh, wow,
dressings. Because we're trying to find out if it's going to work. So I'm going to do a demo on it. But like some of the mixes I have, but like I could go on the buffet and get some cooked carrots and get some chickpeas and some balsamic and make a dressing right there. So,
yeah,
and the reason I'm thinking of this is like cooking doesn't always have to be this long, arduous process of going through websites and cookbooks and looking for things. It literally can be like, I'm trying to see around me right now. Like for my oatmeal, I've been putting this chai spice on it.
Right.
I don't have to think. I cook my oats, I put that on, a little bit of soy milk, and there you go. I have some other blends, like I have a chorizo blend. I can saute some frozen cauliflower rice, put that on there and throw it in tacos.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it does sound like you cook more than you're letting on, is
I
all I
don't
have
cook
to
a
say.
lot. I don't cook a lot. I definitely don't cook a lot. I don't cook anything complicated. I like making soup.
Soup is the
Um,
best.
yeah. And the thing about soup, depending on obviously some soup has very few ingredients in, but if you do a sort of big a pot of vegetables soup, which is always better the next day and maybe the day after that, and you can use lots and lots of different vegetables, so that you're getting close to that 30 plants a week just from doing things like that.
That is also a great idea. I often do like a clean out the fridge soup,
Yes, yes,
right?
yes, I have that too. Yeah. Oh, it's
And
all looking very limp, so let's make some soup.
and celery. Celery is, I always get celery for something. Like Cheryl doesn't like celery. So
Hmm.
now a lot of times I'll use celery seed to flavor it instead because
Right.
she'll eat that. But I'm always like, I needed 2 stalks. What am I going to do with all the celery? And putting it in potato soup makes it feel like you went to a fancy restaurant.
Oh, right. Mm.
Yeah, and like I did a video on potato soup is one of our favorite comfort foods because literally just in the instant pot you cook up some cubes of potato or however chunks of potato. You don't make them the same size; it'll all be fine. And with some water, I have a little vegan chicken broth that I make, which is just like poultry seasoning, so like marjoram, rosemary, a little sage. It's all in one thing that I just shake in there, a little nutritional yeast. And then you can either mash it with a masher and keep it a little chunky or puree it. And that's got to be one of the cheapest things that makes us ridiculously happy.
Yeah, it's real comfort food, isn't it?
It is. And I mean, potatoes are just such a wonderful thing, and those are usually quite inexpensive as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So when you go to the grocer, what do you usually bring home?
Well, I don't very often do that. I'm fortunate to have a partner who does that. When in my life, whenever I got involved with a man and it looked like it might develop into anything serious, I would always say the same thing. I'm not domesticated. I don't cook. I don't do housework. So I, I then, some of them would be, oh, well, that's that then, because I want a woman who's going to cook and clean for me. Um, so the ones that stayed around, and John, I mean, we've been together now 30 years. So he actually does most of the shop, food shopping, and we have an organic. Every week we have an organic a delivery. It could be an organic veg and fruit box, but actually you can either just have an organic veg or fruit box from them, or you can choose what you want. So we tend to just choose what we want. So it's all organic. There's always, potatoes, um, onions, oh dear, cauliflower, carrots, courgette, zucchini, as you call them. We call them courgettes. What else do we put in it? I recently had some broad beans from them, and that seems, I mean, they were incredibly
Ooh,
expensive. And
ooh,
it's
those.
actually not even, I mean, it's not the season till about April. And they came in from Spain, and I looked at the price of them and I went, "Oh no, this is too expensive." And I thought, you know, I could buy, people buy chocolate, um, or a cake or something. And then when they're faced with a vegetable that's just as expensive, it's like, oh no, that's too expensive. So I decided this would be a huge treat for me. And my partner John said, "How do you want it?" And I said, "I just want them barely cooked." And he said, "What else do you want with them?" And I said, "Just that." I said, because I love them so much, and this is just such a treat. So I had them with nothing else, just on their own. It was just wonderful.
Oh, that
But
that's amazing.
definitely expensive, and very surprising for this time of year to find them. So I don't normally buy very, very expensive vegetables, but it was a treat thing. And I think it shows how I've developed over the years, because at one time the idea of buying an expensive vegetable as a treat would have been crazy. I mean, I just it wouldn't have crossed my mind. Buying an expensive bar of chocolate, buying a chocolate cake, um, buying some expensive something or others, or an expensive bottle of wine. That's what I would have done. Those were the treats. So it's interesting that finally, I'm really beginning to see treats as things like some out of season broad beans. So yeah, I think what's very clear talking to people who are plant based and are interested in being plant based for their health. It may not be the only reason. They all say exactly the same. Well, they say two things. One is, I wish I'd done it earlier. And the other thing they say is your buds adjust. And I've really found that now. I mean, if I don't have a salad for like a day and a half, I really, really start to crave salad. Whereas, if I haven't had chocolate for a day, I really crave chocolate. And that doesn't happen now. I sometimes do still crave chocolate, and I will have some, but it's not that often. I don't feel that need to have it at least once a day like I used to. I do feel the need to have a salad. Has that happened to you as well, Kathy?
I definitely get cravings for vegetables, and even we do a pretty heavily starch based diet. So like, if I find that I'm not getting rice or oatmeal or potatoes as often, like we did last year as a group, my community did like a Mary's Mini, which was Dr. McDougall's wife. So everybody picked one starch. And the interesting thing, a lot of people picked potatoes, and they were like, I miss oatmeal so much. And so that, and I will buy some expensive vegetables. And also, I buy Rancho Gordo beans. So I've been on the bean club. And I mean, I'm not saying anyone has to do that
Yeah,
either.
yeah, yeah,
Because you can get beans I go to the Hispanic market, I go to the Indian market, and you can get so much more for your money than even just a regular grocery store in the US.
yeah,
But then I do turn around and spend like $7 a pound on Rancho Gordo beans, like 4 times a year for like 4 or 5 packages. And because I want to support his work, I want to support his work with the farmers in Mexico and preserving those heirloom beans.
yeah,
So sometimes you can make what you buy be in line with a lot of different things. But if we fell on hard times, I wouldn't feel bad stopping that. I want to support it as long as I can. But I'm going to say something very controversial. I love a lot of his beans, and some I like better than any other beans. But like when I get black beans from him or pinto beans, they taste about the same,
right.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And while it's fun, and I love what he's doing, I don't want anyone to feel bad about just buying generic grocery store beans or canned beans. Or the most important thing about beans is that you're eating them. Like,
yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah,
yeah. And the other thing, like, so the reason when I made that face when you said butternut squash, so a few of my tips are like, we have Trader Joe's, which I don't think you have it. And
no,
I love Trader Joe's, because you go in and you pay per piece. So they have a big box of butternut squash, so I could get this one
Oh,
for
right.
$2.99, or I can
Right.
dig and get this one for $2.99.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I am the middle-aged lady digging through that stuff that you were annoyed with. So I'm sorry. But I do the same thing with the cauliflowers are per piece. So you get a little cauliflower or a big cauliflower. I'm going to get the big cauliflower. Um, and it's nice when you can do that. At Whole Foods here, things can go wrong very quickly. So I got a celery root, celeriac, which I
Yeah.
actually adore. It's just such a nice flavor. And so I got one, and that thing was $10.
Oh, yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, so now whenever I have a couple of recipes that I'm like, don't buy it by the pound, or
Yes.
weigh it before you go up front. But I've definitely done that. I like to go to the farmer's market too and just see either new to me things that are there or new to my area. So some people were growing some fava beans. They're growing ginger that we get baby
Oh,
ginger, but
yeah,
we
yeah.
get it
Wow.
at a certain time in the year. So I will splurge on those things as well. But
Mm.
when you're not spending all your money on higher priced meats or meat substitutes, like one thing we do buy a lot of is actual veggies, which is a brand name, which is a very
All
confusing
right.
brand name for these
Yes.
veggie burgers, right? Because you're like, yeah, we've been talking about veggies. Um, and they don't have any oil, they're just really clean. And those I'll spend money on. And then when we get Ezekiel buns, like during the summer, we buy extra ones because they're not there all year for the hamburger buns, put it in the freezer, and then we can make a really cheap, compliant veggie burger when we want to.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
enjoyable when you don't have one all the time,
Yeah. Exactly.
right? And Tanya was saying my Japanese sweet potatoes are expensive too, like $3 to $4 each potato. Those, so it would be Japanese or Korean, the white fleshed with the red skin.
Right. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
get do you get those there
I
as
don't.
well?
Mm, I mean, we get sweet potatoes, but I don't think.
They're orange on the inside.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, this is what. So we were talking about that we are going to end up in UK in the summer for a little while. I'm like, what I really want to do is go into the grocery stores and see the vegetable markets.
I think it won't be as wide. We're a little island. Um, you know, so we don't have the same abundance of variety as maybe you do in the US.
Well, it'll be
Um,
interesting. And like what's in a regular grocery store versus like when I go to the farmer's market where I live, a lot of tobacco was grown and a lot of people redid those tobacco farms into smaller, more specialty vegetables. So that's why
right.
where I live, we get some like ginger, which I think is crazy. Or like, there'll be some things that come out that are really fun, but like I can spend, and I've done this even in the States. If I go to a different state, I go to that Whole Foods. It's on a different distributor. What do they make there? I was in Cleveland last year and saw the most beautiful mushrooms in the Whole Foods that we don't have here. I am literally the most easily amused human being on the face of the planet. I think is what we're really finding out. But a lot of whole food plant-based no oil eaters get those sweet potatoes. And CJ's in Edinburgh. She's in the community. She says we do get white sweet potatoes here, but not in normal supermarkets. So it might be in an Asian market.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they taste like vanilla cake a little
Oh,
bit.
really? Oh,
Oh, yes, they are literally life changing. I learned about them from Chef AJ, and especially when I'm not feeling so well, or I want to make sure that we're not spending a lot of money on things. I cook some of those white sweet potatoes. I usually go to H Mart, which is a Korean grocery, and
Right.
you can get little ones, but some of them are big, so they are quite expensive when you
Yeah.
buy them.
Yeah.
But I just cook a bunch, put it in the fridge, and I'll peel it and just eat it. And then, if I tend to work until I get a little over hungry, so I need
Right.
something I can grab.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or do you have any quick like grab snacks or foods that you use?
Um, I mean, I always make space for nuts, as I've said. I'm actually recently I've been experimenting with not grabbing food, and I'm an inveterate snacker and always have been. And I decided to see what it would feel like not to do so much snacking. And that's quite difficult if you're used to snacking. And so, what I've been doing is I've been doing affirmations after meals. Now, everybody knows about affirmations where you say, I'm a powerful, beautiful woman, or whatever you want to say. Um, but I've never seen anybody talk about doing affirmations after meals, but it occurred to me one day that this would be a good thing to do. So when I've finished the meal, I say, preferably out loud, but sometimes to myself, I've now finished eating and don't need to eat until lunchtime or until 1 o'clock or until 6 o'clock this evening or whatever it is. And I've found that's made a real difference. So I'm sort of like exploring this idea of not snacking, um, which for me is a change from my whole life. So yeah, um, and I'm very good because John, my partner, he'll sort of say lunch is ready or dinner's ready when I've been working away and got totally engrossed in it. So yeah,
That is super helpful.
yeah,
So Cheryl and I both are a little neurodivergent. So sometimes
right,
I don't feel like I won't feel hungry if I'm concentrating on something. And then I get up and I go to the bathroom and I'm like, oh, I'm shaking.
oh
Whereas
really, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So that's one of the things I have to figure out. Like sometimes she's good about starting it, sometimes I'm good about starting it. But having someone on your team to remind you of that, because a lot of times I'm more cranky before I get hungry instead of feeling that feeling in my stomach. So you're lucky to
right.
have John.
Yes, I am in so many ways.
Well, it sounds like you guys are a great pair. So, what are some other budget saving tips for being whole food plant based? Maybe not even just for beginners. Maybe if you've been doing this a while.
Um, do you know about the variety effect? So the variety effect is the idea that if you eat the same food over and over again, you get like you get to feel that you've had enough of it. This is at one sitting or one meal. But if you have a variety, you will eat more. So if you think about having, I don't know, say a box of donuts, vegan donuts, and if they're all the same, you have one and then you think, do I want another one? Maybe, maybe not. And so you're less likely to have more because the other ones look exactly the same. Whereas if you have a box of donuts and every single donut is different, some of them have got icing on, some of them have got jam in them or whatever, then you're much more likely to have a variety of them. So the idea is of the variety effect is that things that you don't want to eat that you consider to be unhealthy, you have less variety of. And it works the other way too, that things that you want to eat more of, you have more variety. So for example, if you have a salad, then if you have your a big pile of zucchini, you might struggle to finish it. Whereas if you have the same amount, but some of it's zucchini, some of it's tomatoes, some of it's grated carrot, then you're likely to eat more. So the sort of fundamental thing is that have more variety available of things that are healthy that you want to eat more of, and have less variety available of things that you don't want to eat. And I think if you've got partners, husbands, wives, teenage kids in the house who don't agree with the way you're eating and want to eat a lot of rubbish, one way of trying to deal with this is saying, so that you don't get tempted, is saying to them, okay, you love, I don't know, chips. So what's your favorite chips? And those are the ones we'll have in the house. The favorite variety, the favorite flavor of those. That's what we'll have in the house. And rather than having a whole variety, and there's a good chance in doing that you're less tempted to eat this rubbishy food, and that also your family will eat less of it as well. Not deliberately, but unintentionally. So it's a sort of win for everybody. So I don't know what you think of that, Kathy.
Actually, I really love it, and I had not heard it put that way before. And I was kind of putting that back on some things that I've done, like exactly what you said. Like, if Cheryl and I got the same donut, I wouldn't eat any of hers. But if we got two
Yeah.
different donuts, I'm at least going to have a bite of hers,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly. Mind you, she'd have a bite of yours. So in that situation, you're probably not eating any more donuts. But you can imagine, and
if
or
we
do you?
if we went crazy and we brought home a dozen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It I can see that for sure. And what's interesting is it's kind of a kind subversive way of
Yes.
kind of also maybe affecting the household by having other people get the one thing that they like instead of a variety pack or
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And you're not
and
saying to them you can't have it because it's unhealthy, and setting yourself up for arguments and conflict. Yeah.
yeah, because that's also, it's much easier to say, can you, instead of saying something as broad as, can you stop bringing that junk in the house?
Yes.
And what you're saying is junk, is it junk to them?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So already that's kind of disparaging. But if you said, hey, I need you to help me. I know these are your favorite. Can you just have your favorites here? And that way I won't be as tempted.
Yeah.
Might be, I'm not saying everyone would go for it, but it's definitely a better way to approach the whole situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I was thinking too of the converse effect, with salads, there are a couple of vegetables I don't love. So zucchini I have to have made certain ways. Like,
Yeah.
I hate a mushy zucchini. Like it just makes me gag kind of thing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but what I will do with that, if it has to be just zucchini, sometimes I'll saute zucchinis in with some mushrooms or do something else. And so I agree, it's a lot easier to mix in things you don't like. Or like, weirdly enough, in general, I don't like green peas. We had some beautiful ones that were smoked, and I'm like, oh, I got to make this at home. But, I don't mind having peas in a curry,
Yeah.
in a vegetable
Yeah.
curry I make. So it is an easier way for me to get those vitamins and nutrients without feeling like I got to have something I don't like. And really, those are the only two things I'm not a huge fan. Cheryl is more of a picky eater. She eats much more than she used to, but I'm learning how to think about textures and things like that. So sometimes it's the texture of a food that she doesn't like. Sometimes it's the taste, and how can I work within that?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think this idea of variety is really good, because a lot of whole food, plant-based, no oil people are like, don't have it in the house. And while I agree that is a wonderful thing if you can
But it's
do
not
it.
always possible. It's not always possible. I agree. Don't have it in the house, and then you avoid the temptation. But if you're living with people who aren't following the same diet as you have to find ways of dealing with that.
Yeah. Tanya's saying the thing that helps in my situation is he is buying mostly animal based junk and treats, so I don't see it as food anymore and don't crave. But it may make
Yeah,
me crave a vegan version. And I do understand that too. Like, I am much less likely to want a burger, and I'm talking vegan burger,
yeah,
but Cheryl eats more of them. And then I see hers and I'm like, maybe that would be good.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and Tanya's also saying, so I have a Ninja Creamy book where I use the white sweet potatoes and I make homemade soy milk. So I use the okara and make that as a base for ice cream. But I also have a mint pea creamy ones because it's green
All
for the
right.
peas. And that is a way I like eating peas because I was like,
Yeah.
if I don't be scared, if I can eat this, you totally can eat this, right? Oh, and CJ says she has a tub of the mint pea creamy in the freezer. That's
Oh, wow.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
How funny. But no, I think that's a really great way of thinking about things. And I don't remember all of our conversation from last time, but I really do feel like we have a similar worldview on being kinder for a lot of reasons. So you can be kind because, yes, I want to spread goodness into the world, but you can also just be a little kinder to make life a little easier for you sometimes
Yes.
too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, kindness is really, really important. And I think, as you say, I mean, in the world now, for all sorts of reasons, we really need more kindness. And, you know, having conflicts within your family over eating isn't actually good for anybody because if you're anxious and stressed, it upsets your digestion and so on and so on and so on. It affects your immune system, it affects your gut microbiome. So it's really important, if we can, to sort of avoid these sort of conflicts. um I mean, I eat a 95% diet. So it used to be a 90% diet, but now it's 95%. So it's 95% good and 5% rubbish. Um, so I think this is a way of, because if you have an all or nothing approach, then you do get into the as I said earlier, where I've had one cookie, I might as well have the whole packet. Whereas I have this 95% diet where I can, which has allowances for me to eat things that aren't, strictly speaking, healthy. But, I've moved from 90% to 95%, and that's not through willpower or anything. It's just what's happened naturally. I think your body learns to want things that are good for it. There's a really, really compelling research where they had two groups of people, and the two groups of people for 8 weeks, I think it was, were given yogurts twice a day. This wasn't I mean, it was a dairy yogurt, but the principle applies. It's not so much about the yogurt, but it's about what happened to the brain. And one group had high fat, high sugar yogurts. The other group were given yogurts that weren't high fat, weren't high sugar, but had the same amount of calories as the high fat, high sugar group. And they did brain scans before and after 8 weeks. And the people who ate the sugary high fat versions for the 8 weeks, when they were faced with pictures of other types of high fat, high sugar food, their brains lit up more than the group who'd had these without that. So what's happening is that if you eat a lot of high fat, high sugar foods, your brain tells you want more, and that moving away from that can take actually a long time. I mean, it's not an overnight process. We need to really sort of think about it, and it can take time. I mean, we talked about that a bit earlier. I think you said that your tastes have changed over time. Yeah, Kathy?
Yeah, and I do find like so we had a little bit of a falling off the wagon last fall. And we actually talk about it in the like secrets of weight loss, because I think it's important to talk about life happens, stresses happen. Cheryl actually got laid off with no notice, and then we
Oh,
lost our health insurance in like 10 days. Like we just had a lot of stuff we had to deal with. She's joined in the business while we're having another channel, and everything's going to be fine, but it was very hard for her. So one thing that I've noticed from going through that, and we're back on track now, is it was very easy and natural to just not think about some of the foods that we did start thinking about as we introduced more of them into our lives. And it was purely stress and comfort.
yeah,
It
yeah.
wasn't like we went, I think I'd like to not be as healthy. Let's go make some
Yes,
bad
yeah,
choices, you know?
yeah,
But I think that what happens, and this is one of the reasons why I like talking about this kindness thing, and a lot of things are going on and making things simple, is that when some kind of hard thing is going on, it's more difficult to feed yourself.
yeah, absolutely,
And
absolutely.
you have to think about it. You have to make it easy. And one of the things that we do to make it easier is like we have First Seed Foods, which I don't think you have. It's an Indian delivery service. So once a month we get this frozen thing. It's a little more expensive than I usually pay for, and I could make those stews and freeze them myself. So you don't have to do this. But we found whenever we were like, ooh, we want to go out to dinner, we want to have something different, we can just go down there. It's all compliant, put it in the microwave, put some rice in the rice cooker, and it's like dinner magically appears.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Because I do agree with you, and I find it very interesting in my own, kind of personal experience, how when I've lost weight in the past, people are kind of like, oh, you're working really hard. And whenever I've lost weight, like when I did the McDougall program and lost 30 pounds, it was like it wasn't hard. And that's what's so interesting. When I'm losing it, it's never hard. When
mm,
I'm trying to get back on track, that's what feels like it takes more effort. And I think it's
yeah,
from what you just said.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to people who've lost huge amounts of weight or, made drastic changes in their life. And what people often talk about is that there is a moment in time, and often, we're talking 5 minutes or maybe even less, where they actually really accept where they are at this moment in time, what their body is like, what their mind is like at that moment in time, rather than sort of always like, I ought to be different or finding excuses. It's this is where I am. And then there's the commitment that follows is I don't want to stay in this place. I want I want to change. And then they're able to do it. I mean, I gave up smoking, and I used to smoke like 40 cigarettes a day in my 20s. And I tried to give up numerous times without success. And then finally, I really got everything ready, got my head in gear, had that moment of this cannot go on any longer. And then I was able to do it. And when I look back, I was like, those all those times I tried, I was bound to fail because I hadn't really deeply, deeply, deeply committed myself to making this change happen.
I really, that's a very clear way to put it. And I can almost feel what you were feeling during that. So that was such a great explanation. Cheryl quit smoking probably a couple of years into us dating because I asked for that for Valentine's Day.
All right.
And I was trying, I was never a smoker. I mean, I think maybe in my like bad poetry era, I'd like smoke some clove cigarettes, but like it was never an addiction for me. So I didn't really understand, but like I was like, okay, maybe we'll try this, and trying to step her in different ways. But nothing really worked until she heard that, and she's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And it is about kind of making up your own mind. And I think I liked what you were saying too about not thinking about, well, this isn't right, or, oh, I should be this, I should be that. Like, because I do find myself as I do go and do more yoga, or if I haven't been able to walk for a while and I go back, like, why is this so hard? A lot of judgments instead of going,
Yes, yes.
so I'm trying to go out and go, I'm just listening to the birds. This isn't about anything than me just kind of going out and exploring the world. Or when I'm doing yoga now, because yoga at almost 60 is very different than it was at 22 when I was
Yeah.
doing it daily, right? So there's a good chance that I may never have exactly that body. I probably won't have exactly that body again, and that's okay. I think you really do have to accept yourself where you are and decide what changes you can make, small or big. And sometimes I think small changes are a little bit easier. I think when you're doing something as big as like quitting smoking, I think that requires a little more planning.
Yeah, 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 I agree. Yeah. I mean,
But if
the
it,
books I've
please.
written, one of the things people say about them is how much they feel it's like a pick and mix. So I give lots of small changes, and then I say, it pick the ones that you think you can do, pick the ones that are the easiest, and make the change like that. Um, and people really like that approach. I think for some things, as I say, like giving up smoking, it does need to be an all or nothing thing. But for other things, moving to a healthier diet, there's lots of little small things you can do. Yeah.
And
So I think
I
we're in total agreement there, Kathy.
absolutely, absolutely, because yeah, there are some things that you have to have these bigger like lines in the sand. Like
Yeah.
if you're going from eating meat to not eating meat. Like for me, I literally saw a side of beef hanging on a hook in the grocery store, and I said, okay, that's it. And it was.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not the normal case. Like I tend to be a little all or nothing, which is
Yes.
sometimes helpful in those situations, but not in others. But, like even just having a salad every day. If you haven't been having a salad, you have a salad, you make a big thing of beans, or open up a can of beans, sprinkle some beans on your salad, buy some shredded. We have coleslaw mix here, so it has cabbage and carrots and things like that.
Yeah.
And even just putting a balsamic vinegar on it and maybe a little fruit. That's an amazing step forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I think
wow.
it's really important people do, um, you know, find time to praise what they've done.
That's a good point too. And when I said wow about it, it's like I'm seeing there are a lot of people that quit smoking.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
Tanya quit smoking 18 years ago, CJ 30 years ago, Lydia 20 years ago, Apple 31 years. And so you guys know. Um, and I do think, and I think I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrase it. You have to praise yourself. What's that?
It's accept yourself for that moment. It's really about accepting yourself as you are, without. It's a moment without judgment, which is very difficult to do, as listeners know. So
You could
that's the
see
point I
that
had to
facial
get.
expression.
Yes, that's the point I had to get to. This I accept that up to this point I've been a smoker. I used to smoke even when I had a sore throat. I'd lose my voice and I'd go to the office and still be smoking. And everybody in the office would go, "How can you smoke, Jane, when you can I still want to smoke."
Both my parents were chain smokers. That's probably why I grew up being a non-smoker.
Mm.
And so they smoked 2 cartons apiece a week. But if my
Wow.
mom woke up to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, she would light a cigarette on the way.
Oh, yeah. I can't remember. I probably did that too.
It's and Apple saying a moment without regrets or wanting to change, radical
Yeah,
acceptance.
absolutely, absolutely. I think that's what you that's sums it up really well. Yeah. Well,
I,
yeah.
I like that. I'm trying to think of, I've been seeing on Facebook, it's like, I think it's something like you can't bully yourself into changing. If that worked, you would have already changed.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I know that I can be like that with myself. I'm much nicer to other people than I
Yes.
am to me. Because I'll be like, you know better. Why are you being so stupid? You know, using words that I would never use for another person. And I think the thing is I'm trying to look around and go, what circumstances are supporting me making these choices? Or what can I do differently when these circumstances happen? And then it feels like you do have a real choice. Where if it's like, a lot of times, if I even go back to when Cheryl was laid off and I had to change some stuff and we're trying to do a lot of things at once, I felt really out of control.
Yeah.
And my mind was on so many different points that we were trying to deal with right then that my brain couldn't be there to make this planning and choices that I usually am able to do. And so I reached a point that I could either just be mad about that, but I couldn't because poor Cheryl was suffering, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so my attention was on that. And so that gave me the opportunity to go, no, it's okay. And sometimes things happen and we don't make the best choices. And that doesn't make us bad people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think feeling helpless, and this is something we talked about last night too. I mean, feeling helpless can make us feel more depressed and less likely to make good choices and things like that. And one of the things is to do something you can control. Like Sangeeta had some great ideas, like, you know, if you have a neighbor or someone you could help or walk someone's dog for them, or just, you know, to reach out in a kindness if you have that energy. Maybe that means, you know, there's a site 5 calls a day that you can, they have scripts, you don't have to think about anything, and you can call your representatives and ask for things to be changed.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Something easy, but it makes you feel like you have a little more control over something.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is to do with energy, but of course, if we, I mean, it's a virtuous circle and a vicious circle. If you eat well, you're likely to have more energy to eat well. If you eat unhealthily, you're likely to have less energy and therefore continue to eat unhealthily. It's quite difficult, you know. That's the way the world is. This is one of the things I'm going to ask God about after I die. Why he organizes, or she organizes, things like this.
It would be really interesting. Apple has a question. She would,
Mm.
oops, sorry, would like you to share a few of your ideas on how to cultivate a new habit.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best things to do is something called habit snacking. No, sorry, habit stacking, not snacking. Habit stacking, where you attach the habit to some activity you're already doing. So I mean, I do actually talk about exercise snacking. So I say to people, you can, if you can't bear to exercise this, you can do various things during the day. So while you're waiting for some water to boil, you could do air squats or something like that. So you're attaching the new habit to something that you're already doing. That works really well if that's practical and works for the new habit. Um, for some new habits, making sure you've got all the preparation in place is really important. So, for example, if you wanted to start going to the gym every morning, then make sure you've got your gym things ready the night before in the bag, and the bag is by the door so that you're ready to go. Um, so yeah, I mean, and also knowing why the new habit is important to you. And one of the uh, I'm started writing another book, and big part of this new book is going to be about core values. So your core values are the values that are really important to you. Obviously, for Kathy, kindness is a core value. It's something she's mentioned repeatedly as we've been talking. Um, so, maybe you've got kindness, independence, community, success. There's all sorts of different core values. If you you can do a web search and you'll get lots. There isn't an agreed list of core values, but you'll be able to find lots of examples of core values. If you can link the new habit you want to achieve to your core value, then that can be really helpful. So you are actually, so, and particularly if you could write about it. So you've got a new habit you want to do. So say, for example, you really value independence. And that's a core value for you, that I am independent. But you want to eat more healthily. So you could start to write about how eating more healthily serves your value of independence. And we know if you eat more healthily, when you're 70, 80, 90, you're likely to be healthier, you're likely to need less help in your life. So this new habit, you fix it very firmly within one or more of your core values. So and that can really be helpful. So that's another way of thinking about your habits as well. I hope that's helpful.
Apple said it was great tips, and I think it was really helpful. Um, Vegan Knowledge says, personally, I use the 3-day rule. So I tell myself to commit only for 3 days. By say 3, you have momentum to say one more day, one more day. And I think
Yeah,
that can be helpful too.
yeah, yeah,
I usually, I like when you were talking about kind of your core values. And I think one of the things that I say, it doesn't matter why you want to go plant-based or vegan to me, but it matters to you. And you have to keep that in mind. Like if you're doing it for the animals, like I did when I became vegetarian, it was really easy for me because it was, it was a learning experience full of many crazy things because it was 1983
yeah,
and
yeah,
crazy stuff is in everything. But, even now, or if you're becoming plant based, you're probably doing it for health. Like I started doing the McDougall plan because I had a liver issue. So
right.
having that in the forefront made it a lot easier to kind of stick with that and be less, I'm trying to think of I tended to beat myself up less because I could see the smaller steps to that one goal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think that's pretty awesome. Are there any other tips that you would like to share with people before we go this time? And I'm wondering, I'm going to ask you when we get off too, like, do you want to come back on and maybe we can pick a date if you're open to it? Because I think this conversation was great. And I want to bring more things to the community, our community that are kind of uplifting, empowering.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
think you brought so much of that today, and I really want to thank you for your generosity.
Well, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I'm really passionate about, sharing the stuff I know. I do a lot of research on what the latest research is showing. And then in my books, I try and put all that out and so that people get a real sense of it. But I think as I've got older, I've learnt, to be kinder, gentler, more empathetic and so on. And yeah, I'd love to come back. Very
Oh,
much so, yeah.
that would be wonderful. So, if you guys are on the mailing list, I sent out a link to Jane's new book. Also, if you look down below, you'll find how to contact her on her website to get her book. a bunch of things like that. She's going to be in the bundle as
Yeah.
well, and that's secret, so we can't talk about what you have in the bundle yet, but we can
Yeah.
later. But I'm just going to give you a couple minutes or to wrap things up or say any things that you wanted to make sure to add into us today.
Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've taken something away. I think it's really important, if at all possible, that what you take away, you try and implement it straight away. Because it's very easy to think, oh, I'll start this tomorrow or, in a few days, and just not do it. So I think it's really important to go away and do it as soon as you can, to commit to doing it if you've liked any of the ideas. I think, being kind to the sort of things we've covered about being kind to yourself, being generous for yourself, but also recognizing that having a healthy lifestyle, which involves eating at least mainly plants, is beneficial for your long-term health, it's beneficial for your happiness. There's more and more evidence showing that we are happier if we eat healthily. So you've nothing to lose. You just need to do it and start small. Start with little things. Oh, and buy my book or my books or one of my other books or even my fourth book. Yeah.
I love that. And it's all,
I hope that was okay.
it was totally okay. And all those books I think are linked to below as
Yeah.
well. So please
Yeah.
do support Jane, and so she can do more research and give us more great information, because it's very helpful and you explain things really very clearly, and that's very helpful to me. Like, I don't always like reading a lot of scientific literature because sometimes it's boring.
Yeah.
And then my brain
Yeah.
turns off.
Yeah.
And not all the time, but it's nice to have it in a way. Like, I felt very connected to what you were saying. So you really explain things incredibly well. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a great day, and thank you. Just like kind of last night, I got a little positivity boost. Now this afternoon, I got a positivity boost. I'm feeling pretty good about today, and I hope you guys are too. And what I would love for you to do, if you have just a little energy, do something nice and kind for yourself, even if it's just to stick your head outside, take a bath, make a salad. And if you have a little bit more energy, maybe if you're out and about, you can be nice to the cashier when you're running your errands. Just keep it small, but everybody's having a hard time right now. So the better, if we have a little extra energy, let's use it for the best we can. And I hope you guys just have the very best day. And I will be seeing you soon. I'm going to pop on some lives when I get some equipment delivered. And I'll leave that. I know. I've got new stuff to show. It's going to be exciting. But again, Jane, thank you so much. I know it's taken us a while to juggle this around, but
Yeah.
I could not be more pleased. And I hope you have the very best evening, too.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, everybody. We will see you very soon, and have